Good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to Career Launcher. My name is Naveen, and today we'll be looking at LRDI basics, and this is part 10 of this series. Okay, so we'll be looking at one of the sets that has come in CAT earlier, a variant most likely of that. There used to be a time when we had four sets, and each set had half of the sets had 6 questions, and half of the sets had 4 questions. So today we are looking at a set which will have 6 questions associated with those. So let's start. So 5 candidates, A, D, J, K, and R, applied for an interview at Himare Limited. Arvind, Neeraj, Pankaj, Rajiv, and Saroj were the 5 panelists who individually interviewed the candidates. Each candidate had to be individually interviewed in 2 rounds by 2 different panelists. The first round of interviews for all the candidates was scheduled with different panelists. No candidate appeared for the second round of interview before the first round of interviews were completed for all other candidates. The panelists scheduled their second round of interviews in the same sequence as their first round of interviews. The following additional facts are known. The first and last interviews of the interview process were conducted for Anshu by Arvind and Saroj respectively. There was only one interview, that of Roshni, which was scheduled between the 2 interviews of Dipti, who was not the first one to be interviewed in any round, and so on and so forth. So basically, if we read the stem as in the first paragraph and try to understand, it's talking about that we have got some panelists, and these panelists are going to interview the candidates. Now, how this interview process is going to happen is that there are going to be 2 rounds. Let's say this is round 1 and we'll have round 2. Okay. Each candidate had to be individually interviewed in 2 rounds by 2 different panelists. So basically, if we pick up a panelist, let's say Neeraj, if Neeraj interviews, let's say Anshu, in the first round, then in the second round, Anshu was not interviewed by Neeraj again. He or she was interviewed by maybe Rajiv or Saroj, somebody else. Okay. The first round of interviews for all the candidates was scheduled with different panelists. It means each candidate was interviewed by a unique panelist, right? Because we have got 5 candidates and we've got 5 panelists, and they are supposed to be different. So it's not that Anshu and Dipti, they both were interviewed by Pankaj, or Jyoti and Kiran, they both were interviewed by Arvind, or vice versa. We can never have Saroj interviewing 2 or more than 2 people. No candidate appeared for the second round of interviews before the first round of interviews were completed for all other candidates, which means unless and until all these 5 candidates, they have completed their interview, the next round will not begin. Okay. So we will understand this better. Okay. So if Jyoti is about to be interviewed in the second round, it means all the 5 should have been already interviewed, right? The panelists scheduled their second round of interviews in the same sequence as their first round of interviews, which means the sequence of the panelists, it did not change. It was fixed. It's only the sequence of the people who are giving the interviews, those things changed. And then we have got some additional facts. Let's look at the questions. So, like I said earlier, there are 6 questions. Who was the panelist for Jyoti's interview in the second round? Which of the following is definitely true? For which of the following candidates the interview was definitely conducted by Rajiv? Who was the panelist for Dipti's interview in the second round? For how many candidates can both the panelists for each round be uniquely determined based on the given information? And how many interviews were scheduled between the 2 interviews of Jyoti? So basically, most likely, we will be able to figure out everything about the 5 panelists and their corresponding 2 candidates in each of the 2 rounds. Okay. So what I will do is I'll give you guys few minutes. Okay, this is not a difficult set, but I'll give you guys 5 minutes to go ahead, you know, pause the video and give it a try yourself. Now, people who are solving it live, you guys have real time 5 minutes to solve. Okay, so let's try. Let's start. So what I will do is I will draw a schedule, just like how you guys used to draw when you were in school, a timetable. Okay. Since we know that there are 5 panelists and there are going to be 5 interviews conducted in each round, so this is what it should look like, right? So the five candidates are Anshu, Dipti, Jyoti, Kiran, and Roshni, and Arvind, Neeraj, Pankaj, Rajiv, and Saroj. They were five panelists. So the first and last interviews of the interview process. So the first interview and the last interview. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the name of the panelists here because those are fixed. And this is going to be round number 1. And this is going to be round number 2. Okay. So basically, this is the first interview. This is the second, third, fourth, and fifth interview of the first round, and then first, second, third, fourth, fifth interview of the second round, where this is going to be the first interview of the entire process, and this is going to be the last interview of the entire process. Right? Okay. So, as per the question, first statement, the first and last interviews of the interview process, which means we are talking about these two, were conducted by Anshu, were conducted for Anshu, sorry, by Arvind. So definitely the panelist is Arvind and Saroj respectively. So the last one is going to be Saroj. And the candidate who is being interviewed is Anshu. So Anshu was interviewed in both these rounds, and we know now Arvind and Saroj. They're also where are they? Arvind being the first panelist and Saroj being the last. We know that. We're done with the first statement. Then the second statement says there was only one interview, that of Roshni, which was scheduled between the two interviews of Dipti, who was not the first one to be interviewed in any round. So basically, Dipti is supposed to have two interviews. Between the two interviews of Dipti, we are supposed to have only one more interview, and that is going to be Roshni's, right? So, if the thing is, if we take the first interview of Dipti here, the second interview of Dipti will happen here. We can't have both the interviews of a person in the same round. So we can have one interview of Dipti over here. There is a gap which Roshni will take, so that the next interview of Dipti turns out to be in the next round, right? But then it is given that the Dipti is not the first one to be interviewed in any of the rounds, so Dipti cannot come there. So the next possibility is if we shift Dipti. So basically, we are supposed to have a gap of 1. So that Dipti is there is a gap of 1, and again Dipti is here, right? And so Roshni will take this place. Right now, Dipti is in both the rounds. Dipti is not, both the interviews of Dipti is not in the same round. And there is only one gap between two interviews of Dipti, which is taken up by Roshni. And also, Dipti is not the first one to be interviewed in any of the rounds, right? Everything makes sense here. Okay. Third, there were equal number of interviews scheduled before as well as the interviews conducted by Neeraj in both the rounds. It means wherever Neeraj, he's the interviewer, right? So wherever the Neeraj conducts the interview, the number of interviews that are supposed to happen before his and after his is supposed to be same. Well, obviously this should happen when Neeraj is going to take the interview in the middle. So this is where Neeraj is, right? So that there are two interviews before Neeraj and two interviews after his in the first round as well as in the second round. Okay, next. Number of interviews scheduled before Kiran in first round was equal to the number of interviews scheduled after Kiran in the second round. So if I take Kiran here, so the number of interviews before her is first, one interview in the first round. So she should come here so that the number of interviews after her in the second round is same. So this makes sense. What if we shift Kiran next here? So if we shift Kiran here, so the number of interviews before her is 2, and here the number of interviews after her is also going to be 2. This is also fine. But the thing is, Kiran gets interviewed by the same guy, same person in both the rounds. This is not allowed, right? So we cannot have the same person name in a column. So this has to be removed. This is not possible. Next, what if Kiran is here? So there are 3 interviews of Kiran, as there are going to be 3 interviews before Kiran's interview in the first round. So we should have 3 interviews that should happen after Kiran's in the second round. Dipti is already present, so we can't put Kiran there. Same logic, we cannot put Kiran further. So basically, the only place Kiran can go is going to be as the second interview, under second panelist, and under the fourth panelist in both the rounds respectively. Now, in the second round, we can see that out of 5 people, 4 people names are already here. We have got Roshni, we have got Dipti, we have got Kiran, and we have got Anshu. So the leftover person is going to be Jyoti. So Jyoti comes here, right? Now, we cannot have the same person in the same column. So if Jyoti is here, so Jyoti is supposed to be here. Now, there is only one person left, who is going to be Roshni, who comes here. So when it comes to candidates, every candidate, where is that candidate in each of the rounds is known. The only thing that is not known is about the panelists. Okay, so Arvind is there, Neeraj is there. We can have Pankaj, and we can have Rajiv here, or we can have Pankaj here, or we can have Rajiv. So if you do it for the second time, you will realize that this is very, very easy set. Okay, the first time when people were attempting this set, they were finding it difficult because of the language, because the understanding that the same person cannot come in the same column. Okay. Now, let's go back to the questions and try to solve them. Who was the panelist for Jyoti's interview in the second round? For Jyoti's interview in the second round, it's definitely Neeraj here, right? So, Neeraj, second, which of the following is definitely true? Kiran was interviewed by Rajiv in the first round. Kiran was maybe interviewed by Rajiv in the first round, or it may be by Pankaj, don't know. Jyoti was interviewed by Pankaj. Jyoti was interviewed by Pankaj, maybe in the first round, and in the second round, definitely no. Roshni was interviewed by Neeraj. Roshni is definitely interviewed by Neeraj and also by Arvind, but it doesn't talk about the round number, so C is going to be fine. Right? Okay. For which of the following candidates the interview was definitely conducted by Rajiv? So we can see that if Rajiv is there in the second person as the second interviewer, then Kiran and Dipti exists. And if Rajiv is the second last interviewer, then Jyoti and Kiran exists. So we can see that Kiran is the name which is definitely there. So it doesn't matter whether Rajiv is in the second interviewer or the second last. Kiran will stay. So it's going to be Kiran. Who was the panelist for Dipti's interview in the second round? In the second round, Dipti's panelist, we do not know. It may be Rajiv, it may be Pankaj. So answer is going to be cannot be determined. Next, for how many candidates can both the panelists for each round be uniquely determined based on the given information? So if we look at Anshu, we know both the rounds. If we look at Kiran, we do not know the first round itself. If we look at Roshni, we know both the rounds. It's Neeraj and Arvind. If we look at Jyoti, we do not know that. If we look at Dipti, it's Saroj in the first round, but in the second round, we do not know who her panelist was. So there are only 2 candidates for whom we know the 2 panelists. Next, how many interviews were scheduled between the 2 interviews of Jyoti? So this is where the first interview took place. This is where the second interview took place. So 3 interviews happened between Jyoti's 2 interviews. So option A. Okay. So if you guys have any queries, please feel free to comment in the chat, and make sure you subscribe the channel if you haven't. Thank you. Thank you for attending the session. I'll see you again with another session of another sets of LRDI. Until then, take care.